Good morning, everyone. I was waiting an hour and no one was here. We actually had that happen when I was at Enmanji Temple in California, and it was the spring. And so you turn your clock ahead 1 hour, and the guest minister didn't show up 5 minutes before, and he happened to live just like a half a mile from the temple. And so, Sensei, we call him, where are you? Well, I have plenty of time to get there. And go, oh no, the service starts. Did you turn your clock ahead 1 hour? Oh no. So I don't know what state of getting dressed he was, but he got there very quickly. Well, this week we have a national holiday. And I was thinking about Kusunoki Sensei today going to Yakima. And so many times I went to Yakima with a veteran, Hiro Nishimura, who was in the military intelligence service in World War II. And he used to love to go over to Yakima and visit his friends over there. And so we would have long conversations in the car going over, and he would meet his fellow veteran Maswada over in Yakima, who really headed the temple towards the end of his life and was very active in the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And so this week, on November 11th, we have Veterans Day. And you know why it's November 11th? Interesting. I didn't know until last night. I'm doing my research. And it used to be, when I was a kid, it was called Armistice Day. And it dates back from the end of World War I. The year after was the first Armistice Day. And armistice meant the ceasing of hostilities. And so the hostilities ended at 11 o'clock at night, I guess, or maybe 11 o'clock in the morning, I'm trying to think. But anyway, it was 11 o'clock on the 11th day of the 11th month. So that's why it's always November 11th. And now, do you know the difference? Why do we have Veterans Day, and then in May we have Memorial Day? What's the difference between the two holidays? Do you know? On Memorial Day, which is a much older holiday, actually dating from the Civil War, 1868, and so there were more Memorial Days for the Union veterans and Memorial Day for the Confederate veterans. And it's those who died in war or as a result of being in war for this country. And so that's people who died in war. Veterans Day are those people who served in the military in any of the wars that we had. And I'm making it very brief because I had so much more written here, but there's so much I wanted to say today. I thought, you're so eager to get to cleaning, I'd better... But just because someone is a veteran doesn't mean that they didn't have a terrible loss from being in the military. And that can be post-traumatic stress syndrome. It can be a physical loss. And when I started as a minister in San Francisco in 1977, and I retired here at the end of 2016, so just about 40 years. And in that 40 years, the majority of Japanese-American veterans of World War II, the very famous, 442nd Go for Broke regimental combat team that suffered such high casualties. And those who died, we remember on Memorial Day. And there's an obelisk at Lakeview Cemetery with the names of all from this community who died in all the various battles going back to the Spanish-American War in the late 1890s. But most of the names are from World War II. But there were many, as I did funerals for the veterans, during those 40 years, most of the veterans passed away, the 40 years of my ministry. And it took me a long time to understand. It was only after I came to Seattle and actually quite a few years in Seattle that I started realizing that at every funeral, the veteran, the Nisei veteran, had received the Purple Heart. The Purple Heart is given if you're wounded in battle. And it struck me the reason that they had their funeral, that they had a long life, was because they were removed from the battlefield. They were wounded and they left the battlefield. How many were, died on the battlefield? And that was a to me, very profound awakening. I remember only one funeral where the deceased veteran didn't have the Purple Heart. And I found out from his family he was the cook. So, he wasn't in battle. And, but I was, when I came here in 1986, and I went to my first Memorial Day observance at Lakeview, and the programs, for many years, I noticed were very Christian, And I actually, those of you who remember when I worked here and I had a really, really messy office, it's because I never threw anything away. And so I have programs from the Lakeview Memorial Day observance, and year after year, here's 1989, and the cover would be "One Nation Under God," in the program. And here's the one from 10 years later, 1999. "America, America, God shed his grace on thee." And then after that, here's 2001, and they don't have anything written on the front, but they have the picture of the American flag and then the crosses of the grave. Always predominantly Christian. Here's one from 2002, and it's the American flag with the cross, the Christian cross or a grave, the cross of the grave. Now things have changed. When my teacher, Reverend Eidman from the Institute of Buddhist Studies, Reverend Eidman was a veteran of World War II, and when he died in 1997 down in California, and his body was, he was cremated, and his body was buried at the Veterans Cemetery in Burlingame, California, and on his grave is the Buddhist wheel. Things changed, and the military has changed. When I first started in San Francisco, at the Buddhist temple in San Francisco, and one very prominent member of the temple one day said to me, "You know, the reason I'm a Buddhist is because when I was in the military during World War II, and they asked me, 'What religion are you?' for his dog tags, you know, to identify on his dog tags. 'What religion are you?' And he said, 'I'm a Buddhist.' And they said, 'We'll put down Protestant.'" You know. So, you know, Buddhists have been shortchanged, I think, over the years. And I mentioned to, I'm sure on one of our trips over to Yakima, and I mentioned to Hiro Nishimura, you know, every year at the Lakeview Cemetery, you know, we have programs and they all have a Christian cover. I said, but aren't most of the people who died in World War II, most of the veterans, Buddhist? And I don't remember, but I know I said that to him. Ever since, it's been a different cover. So the last one I had from 2016 was just, it had just the American flag on the cover of the service at Lakeview. But anyway, a few years ago in 2019, we were very fortunate to have the author of the book American Sutra. If you haven't read this book, it's the Japanese-American experience of incarceration during World War II from a Buddhist point of view. And it is so insightful, and we are fortunate to have Dr. Duncan Williams come and talk to us about his book. It was actually the launching of the book. It dates from 2019. And he's also an authority on Buddhism and ecology, and that was why we invited him. But he spoke to both themes. And those of you who remember the question and answer about the book that we had right here in 2019. He was just a really brilliant person. And in this book, he states, he says, with a few notable exceptions, most histories of the Japanese-American involvement in the United States military disproportionately highlight individuals who were Christian, despite the fact that the majority who served were Buddhist. That's a strong statement. And then he cites Reverend Newton Ishiura, who spoke here many years ago because he transferred from Hawaii to the mainland. But when he was in Hawaii, he said, Reverend Newton Ishiura, the executive secretary of the Hawaii Federation of the YBA, discovered that 400 of the 506 Hawaii-born Nisei killed in action during the war were Buddhist. So that's 400 out of 506. 80% were Buddhist. And so that's kind of, and I didn't know that, I didn't have the statistics, I didn't have the, the strong statement of someone like Dr. Duncan Williams, but I said, aren't they, when I was talking with Hiro, aren't most of the veterans and those who died in World War II, weren't they Buddhist? And so I don't know what he did, but after that, always the program was not so strongly Christian. And, but there's I want to go in a slightly different direction because something interesting, thanks to, and those of you who remember John Litz, who was kind of the historian of the, and historian of the temple. And he went through all these old newspaper articles. And it's embarrassing from a Caucasian point of view. So these articles from the early 1900s about the Japanese American community, about the Buddhist community. I mean, one of them from, let me go back here. One of them from 1909, July 11th, the Seattle PI. And it says, it's Reverend Inoue says, temple depends on the contributions of white women. It says, calls Buddhism an American fad. You know, one of the early supporters of the temple was a woman named Thelma Anderson. And she was also teaching English to immigrants. And so this minister says, you know, Buddhism is just a fad, it's going to pass out of existence, and so and really the temple depends on the contributions of white women. Where in the world, you know, these are really off-the-wall articles. And this one I found particularly interesting. You know, Memorial Day, originally, after the Civil War, it started, and it was to remember those who died in war. But apparently it became, and is today, for many people, a day to remember ancestors. You know, not just those who died in war, but if you broaden it, it takes away, to me, personally, my opinion is, it takes away the meaning of the holiday. You know, if you say, well, let's just remember everybody. Well, but the specific point is to remember those who died in war or as a result of war. But apparently early on, it broadened. It was broadened. And I have an article that John Litz gave me, and it's, again, from the Seattle PI. The title of the article is, Welcome Spirits of Buddhist Dead. And it says, Japanese festival of Bono, now they really massacred this. The Bono Dari, which is Obon, right? Okay. Japanese festival, oh, this is also July. The article is in the PI in July 12th, 1908. 1908. So it says, Japanese festival of Bono Dari is ignored by local Nipponese. Now listen to the language of this. It says, the great annual Buddhist festival of Bono Dari, the All Saints' Day of Japan, will be observed throughout the Mikado's domain commencing tomorrow and lasting until Wednesday night. This day corresponds with Memorial Day in this country. Local Japanese state that as they are residents and citizens of this country, and many of them are Christians, they observe the American days, not the holidays of their native country, and the feast days of the Buddhist religion. They decorated the graves of their dead on May 30th, and so will not observe this festival. Right? So please let Ron Hamakawa know that. So amazing. Here's another article. Again, Japanese adopt Memorial Day for their dead. Now, my idea is if we keep Memorial Day really to remember those who died in war, then remembering all your loved ones who have passed away, that would be at Obon time. So shouldn't we as a nation adopt Obon in July and everybody go out and visit the graves of their loved ones at Obon time? because we don't have anything like that in this country. We have Memorial Day, Veterans Day. I mean, Veterans Day is just those who served. So it's, you know, you go back and it's really interesting. It's really amazing to see a history and to understand a history, because that helps us, even though I'm not Japanese or Japanese American, it helps me to understand what it is to be an American, you know. And when I think about those people who served in World War II, and many of the veterans I got to ride with and talk about their lives with, people like Maswada over in Yakima, Hiro Nishimura, what they experienced, what they saw, you know, it helps us to understand who we are and what it is to be an American and the sacrifices that people have made, and the people who had the courage of their convictions, you know, and not just those who necessarily served in the military. You know, on the other side you have the no-no boys, but they had the courage of their convictions and they suffered for it. You know, so I think Buddhism helps us to understand that it takes courage to live. You know, Buddhism starts off with pain and suffering will touch every life. And if you think life is going well for you, get a broader view of life. You know, that I am grateful that I am healthy now, but there are others who aren't. And our sense of who we are is we. It's not me alone. I don't live separately. The basis of Buddhism is interdependence, mutual co-arising. We are in this together. So if I have health, if I have a mind, if I have time, opportunity, it allows me to do this, because for this person who doesn't have time, who doesn't have health, who doesn't have the opportunity. That's what's called Mahayana Buddhism, means the great vehicle. The great vehicle is the one that accommodates everyone, not just one person alone. That's a fiction of our mind, you know. So there are many people who have suffered and who have sacrificed, and I think this book to me just gave me a perspective that I never had before from 2019. And right now I'm studying, I'm not studying, but I'm reading a lot of books on American history. It's really eye-opening. And so history, I think, is important. We come, we listen, we learn, and as we learn, hopefully we grow spiritually as well as physically. So, and a day without, the Zen master said, a day without cleaning, a day without work is a day without food. That's a Zen saying. So let's get to cleaning. Please join me in Gassho. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.